The Consumer Electronics Show, CES, will be held in Las Vegas on January 7th next year, and as usual, Chinese companies are showing strong enthusiasm for participation. But with less than a month to go before the event, many Chinese companies have reported that their employees are being denied U.S. visas, even though they hold official invitations to attend. The scale of these rejections is unprecedented. According to a report by the South China Morning Post on December 2nd, a 28-year-old marketing professional from Beijing shared her experience of being denied a visa by the U.S. Embassy. Despite showing the official CES invitation letter and clearly stating her purpose of attending the exhibition, she was still refused a visa. She mentioned that the chances of being denied a visa are as high as 90% when applying to attend CES. For Chinese companies, attending CES is considered an important opportunity to go global. This year, the exhibition is expected to have more than 4,000 exhibitors, with over 1,200 companies from China, making up nearly 30% of the total. These companies are not only showcasing traditional electronics, but also the latest advancements in cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, and cloud computing. Despite having invitations, many employees of Chinese tech companies have still faced visa rejections. Analysts say that such widespread refusals are unprecedented for CES. On social media platforms like Xiaohongshu, some exhibitors have shared their visa rejection experiences. The approval rate is extremely low. At one company, the only employee who received a visa had previous travel experience to Europe or the US. Some exhibitors have mentioned that due to the shortage of personnel, a 54 square meter booth was manned by only 3 employees. It's been reported that the cost of a typical booth is around 50,000 yuan, with better locations exceeding 100,000 yuan. On top of that, the construction cost could be an additional 200,000 yuan or more, not including travel expenses. For some exhibitors, this has resulted in significant financial losses. To secure visas, many companies have been trying various strategies. Some Chinese exhibitors have resorted to alternative methods, such as applying under the name of their overseas subsidiaries rather than the headquarters, using tourist visas, or hiring agencies to assist with the process, though success is not guaranteed. The core issue behind the situation is a heightened tech competition between the US and China. Chris Pereira, founder of the US-based consulting firm Impact, said that in a survey of 40 Chinese companies aiming to expand internationally, half the respondents reported that their employees' visas have been rejected. During the COVID-19 pandemic, CES visas were still being issued normally. Pereira added that the refusal of visas for Chinese attendees reflects the U.S. government's efforts to reduce interactions with China, including flights, trade, and dialogue. But as these ties are increasingly severed, the potential for conflict grows. CES, as the world's largest consumer electronics show, is a major platform for showcasing innovation and exchanging ideas, providing companies with vital opportunities to demonstrate their strength and expand their markets. In the past, Chinese companies were a major presence at CES, with a record 1,551 exhibitors in 2018. Even before the global COVID-19 outbreak, more than 1,000 Chinese companies participated in CES 2020. However, due to the U.S. government's security concerns, particularly regarding Huawei and other Chinese companies, and China's strict border controls during the pandemic, the number of Chinese exhibitors at CES dropped sharply to 210 in 2021. It further declined to just 159 in 2022, slightly rebounded to 493 in 2023, and finally reached 1,114 in 2024. Many companies had made detailed preparations to attend this international trade show, but now they are unable to showcase their innovations due to visa issues. This is not just a simple problem of visa denial, it is a reflection of the ongoing technological Cold War between the US and China. The visa rejections not only mean that some business people are unable to attend CES, they also risk missing out on collaboration opportunities, further impacting the competitiveness of Chinese companies internationally. For instance, Xpeng's flying car, which is supposed to demonstrate China's technological power at CES 2024, may not have the same impact if visa issues prevent key team members from attending. Similarly, companies like TCL and Hisense are showcasing their latest products, but visa denials could undermine their efforts. After the US reduced flights and imposed sanctions on China, it's now refusing visas for several Chinese nationals. Does this mean that the US wants to close the door on interactions with China altogether? It's worth noting that the US influence has led other Western countries to decouple in various areas of dialogue. For example, in November, Switzerland's ETH Zurich University announced it would limit admissions for Chinese students by tightening security reviews. Meanwhile, China continued to optimize its entry policies, unilaterally granting visa exemptions to more countries. This is quite different from China's long-standing diplomatic reciprocity principle. Throughout 2024, China has taken steps unlike before, opening up visa exemptions for 25 countries, including Singapore, Thailand, and Kazakhstan, and extending unilateral exemptions to 29 other countries, such as France and Germany. As of now, China has signed visa exemption agreements with 157 countries and regions for various passport types. Why is China expanding its visa exemption list? Nick Morrow, chief economist for Asia at the Economist Intelligence Unit, told BBC Chinese that China is concerned about foreign investment. Throughout 2024, foreign investment has been declining, and the global perception of China worsened due to the pandemic, which is not fully recovered yet. One way to rebuild some of those relationships is by unilaterally opening up visas, believing that person-to-person exchanges can help stabilize both the economy and diplomatic relations. However, Morrow emphasized that while this logic makes sense, at least for hawkish decision-makers in the West, it might be seen as too little too late. Visa rejections for CES attendees has sparked widespread attention and discussion. Mr. Chi, a Chinese tech industrial professional, spoke with Radio Free Asia about the rapid decline of China's economy, mentioning that overcapacity in electronics has led to inventory buildup. He explained that CES is an important bridge connecting China to international markets, and this large-scale visa rejection obviously weakens the international influence of Chinese companies and products. Mr. Chi suggested that the U.S. visa rejections are in a sense a statement. They signal that there is no longer any meaningful or valuable exchange between China and the U.S. He emphasized that Chinese companies primarily attend CES to showcase their electronic products, which are mostly consumer electronics and not high-precision or military-related technologies. Therefore, denying visas for CES attendees is more about the U.S. asserting its stance, reflecting a lack of value in these exchanges for both sides. Professor Yang Haiying from Shizuoka University in Japan pointed out two main factors behind the U.S. refusal to grant visas to Chinese company employees. The first is to block Chinese companies from accessing advanced technology through events like CES. He explained that Western technologies are often used by China for activities considered hegemonic, both abroad and within China, such as using cutting-edge technologies to monitor various ethnic groups. The U.S. wants to prevent China from using these technologies for potentially harmful purposes. The second concern is a fear that China might use various channels to steal U.S. advanced technology, given that CES attracts exhibitors from all over the world. Professor Yang also stated that in China, all companies are under government control, making it difficult to distinguish between truly private businesses and those that are state-influenced. In fact, China does not have a strict definition of private enterprises, and companies need government support to grow and scale. He added that even small private businesses must have a party committee subject to the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Regarding the ongoing restrictions on US-China exchanges, this action could be tied to Trump's return to the White House. On November 25th, Trump announced that on his first day back in office, he would impose a 10% additional tariff on goods from China, continuation of his promise to raise tariffs on Chinese imports by 60%. Back in 2018, during his first term, Trump started a trade war with China by announcing tariffs on Chinese imports. Data shows that over the past 6 years, China's share of U.S. imports has dropped from 20% to 13%. However, this decrease largely reflects a shift of some goods being rerouted through countries like Mexico and Vietnam to avoid U.S. tariffs. To address this, Trump would impose new tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. Exports in these countries are now rushing to send their goods to the U.S. Recently, under pressure from Trump, the Mexican government conducted a surprise raid on Mexico Market, a large trading hub in Mexico City known for selling Chinese and other Asian counterfeit goods. Since the building's exterior has large Chinese characters reading Yiwu International Trade City, the locals also refer to it as Yiwu City. This crackdown could signal the disruption of the channel through which Chinese goods are exported to the U.S. via Mexico. Mexico's President, Claudia Sheinbaum, responded by saying that the government has taken action and is requiring companies to replace Chinese components with locally produced products. Mexico has historically had very close economic ties with China, particularly in sectors like the automotive industry and supply chains. Last year, major Chinese car manufacturers like SAIC, BYD, and Chery invested in building factories in Mexico, with investments surpassing 100 billion yuan, $13.7 billion US dollars. Chinese products are deeply embedded in Mexico's supply chains, including in sectors like infrastructure, medical equipment, automobiles, semiconductors, daily goods, and clothing. In fact, a significant portion of the goods Mexico exports to the U.S. come from China. The high tariff era is expected to push even more multinational companies to leave China. Recently, a high-level executive from an electronics group in Guangdong, which supplies components to U.S. home appliance manufacturers, stated that they are considering Morocco as an alternative production base. Another executive mentioned that the company had delayed plans to expand its production line in Mexico, anticipating that Trump would block Chinese companies from exploiting the proximity of Mexico to the U.S. market. If Mexico truly decides to decouple from China, the consequences will extend beyond trade benefits and include significant Chinese investments in the country. It seems that the decoupling will continue between China and the U.S. in trade. Both major political parties in the U.S. have reached a consensus on this issue, and the next step will be figuring out how to execute this decoupling. On November 19th, the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission officially recommended in its annual report that Congress should revoke China's permanent normal trade relations status. A few days earlier, John Moolenaar, chairman of the House Representatives Special Committee on China, introduced a bill to formally end China's PNTR status. Moolenaar stated that removing this status would protect our national security, support supply chain resilience, and return manufacturing jobs to the U.S. and our allies. According to WTO rules, a country can revoke trade preferences based on national security concerns. U.S. President Joe Biden exercised this exception in 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine by revoking Russia's PNTR status. PNTR status was previously called Most Favored Nation status. In international economics, this means that a country offers another country non-discriminatory trade policies, such as the same tariffs and import quotas for all trade partners. This status allows the U.S. and China to enjoy the most favorable trade terms without the need for annual reviews. The trade between the two countries has grown significantly. According to Chinese customs data, from 2000 to 2024, China's exports to the U.S. increased from around 50 billion US dollars to approximately 500 billion, a tenfold increase. William Reinsch, Director of International Business at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, noted that with both the U.S. House and Senate, as well as the White House under Republican control next year, the possibility of revoking China's PNTR status is very high. The U.S. maintains normal trade relations with most countries in the world. If China's PNTR status is revoked, Chinese goods will face higher tariffs, and China's trade status will be lowered to that of countries like North Korea, Cuba, and Russia. A report from Shewan Hongyun, a Chinese state-owned securities company, explored the potential impact of revoking MFN status on China. The company's chief economist, Zhao Wei, wrote, "If the U.S. revokes China's MFN status, the average tariff for non-MFN countries in the U.S. is 42%, plus about 20% under Section 301 tariffs, meaning that China's average tariff could exceed 60%. The report indicated that the current average tariff rate for US's MFN status is about 2.2%, but in reality, 48% of Chinese exports to the US no longer benefit from MFN tariff rates. When Trump takes office in January, he will likely continue his hardline approach in high-tech sectors such as semiconductors, electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing, as well as trade and military affairs, to curb China's influence. Chinese economist Xu Chengguang argued that this situation resembles the Cold War era US-Soviet competition. He believes China is now facing the same economic decline that the Soviet Union experienced, and the US will push for a stronger collaboration with its allies, both governmental and private, to advance critical technologies.